Welcome, everybody. It is so exciting to see so many people. I had no idea we'd have over 500 people registered for tonight's event. But I promise you, you're not going to be disappointed. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm Doug Piper, and I'm with Gourmet Brewing in Greenville, South Carolina. This is our 63rd major event. And I want you to know how much I appreciate you spending a little time with Kevin, Justin, and myself. We're going to have a lot of fun. I hope everybody is staying well and staying safe and getting through this challenging year, or years, plural now. Gourmet Brewing is all about making your day a little more delicious, one sip at a time. And today, we're with craft coffee experts, Kevin Sinnott in Warrenville, Illinois, and Justin Doggett in Chicago. So if I click all the buttons right, I hope I can bring everybody up on screen. Yes, I like it when it works. Now, everybody in the audience, please put some, high fives or a thumbs up or something there in the chat to show these guys how much you appreciate, because they're volunteering their time to be with us tonight. And it takes a lot of commitment to get everything in place, and I just want to show a little love to these guys. We've been working together for some months to make this happen for you. Now, the first person I want to introduce is Kevin Sinnott, and Kevin's there in the center. He's the author of 2 books, The Art and Craft of Coffee, an enthusiast's guide to selecting, roasting, and brewing exquisite coffee. His second book was Great Coffee, the Coffee Lover's Guide. Now, some people have called Kevin the real Mr. Coffee. That's quite an endorsement. But the way I know him is he's the creator of CoffeeCon, and this is where we met for the first time. And Kevin, would you do me a big favor and introduce Justin, since you know him much longer than I, and share a little bit about CoffeeCon, because it's such a great educational resource and event.
Yeah, should I introduce Justin first, or is that what you...
However you would like to do it.
Well, let me talk about CoffeeCon and then get out of the way, because I want to, once we start talking about cold brew, I'm with the maven of cold brew, and the person I would personally call, you know the number of times, Justin, I've whenever I have a cold brew issue, anything comes up. Unfortunately for him, I have his cell phone number, and I can. Anyway, let's tell you about CoffeeCon. CoffeeCon is what I do to. I define myself by my work. A lot of people do, and I really like CoffeeCon. CoffeeCon is the event that, and like all of my best ideas, I didn't create it. My wife thought of it. She said we should just have an event about coffee that's aimed at consumers, because she didn't like going to trade shows, and also trade shows have, I don't need to know how to fire employees. I don't need to know how to, janitor supplies for my store or insurance plans and things. A lot of those things are the focus of coffee trade shows. You go there for the glamour, right? But actually, CoffeeCon's all about the brewers, the different beans, and it's just a chance to go absolutely crazy. Usually, so you don't sleep for 3 or 4 days after you're there. It's a great opportunity, and you get to meet some of people that to me are celebrities, like Justin, like the names of the coffee business, George Howells, the Ken Davids. I could name drop all day, I guess, but these are people that I really admire. And they started us, they created a whole specialty coffee world. And you get to go to classes, you get to go, all the fun and none of the nonsense, So we really enjoy tasting coffees, learning how to brew. Unfortunately, compared to beer and wine, coffee absolutely needs to be prepared at home. There's no real way around it. Well, actually, there is. Now let's bring me to our guest, and that's Justin Doggett. The biggest thing about cold brew that hit me is exactly that. Finally, the industry has an answer, has something that they can put, and you don't have to do it. If someone comes over, a surprise visit from a guest, you want to have coffee. Even I want to hang out with my guest, not just start measuring total dissolved solids in a brewer. Well, thanks to Justin and the people at the pioneers, really what they were, cold brew is a thing. And I'll tell you, the first time it came out, it was brought in. I'm in the Midwest. For all intents and purposes, I live in Chicago. And what people did is they used it in the summer because it would get so hot. Doug, where you are, I'm sure you have this longer than we do, but you got to have a chance to cool off with coffee. So it started there. I remember the first year, Justin, that you were at CoffeeCon. And someone else came up to me and said, I think this cold brew is really turning into a big thing. And I said, you do? I said, well, that's why we have Justin here. And he said, yeah. And he said, you know what's interesting about this year? This is a roaster that had a bunch of shops. There's a bunch of shops. And they said, first year, the cold weather's coming and cold brew is still popular. I thought wow, that's significant. That's how it is. Once something really gets in people's blood, they want it all the time. My dad loved iced tea. My dad would have iced tea in December. And when people start to really, enjoy a beverage or anything and really get into it, well, that's where cold brew is now, thanks to him. Justin is probably the most knowledgeable person I've met in the coffee industry. I like to think I know everyone in the coffee industry. I think Justin's the most knowledgeable person about cold brew. So you've got
pressure's on, Justin.
Start at the top, Doug.
Mr. Coffee just called you the expert.
I'm not so sure about that Mr. Coffee thing. That's a lousy coffee maker, by the way.
Well, I think it's well deserved. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for doing that and for getting us together. We're going to have a lot of fun tasting some of that cold brew, but I understand you're going to be fixing a delicious dinner for Pat.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's really the most important thing I do. Believe me, there'd be no CoffeeCon if I don't make that beautiful dinner.
Please tell her we appreciate getting a few minutes of your time that might have interfered with her dinner.
Well, thank you. And I'll what I'm going to do is position the laptop in the background, so I'll just keep nodding at what she talks about, and then I'll get to watch the show.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. I really, really appreciate not only you, CoffeeCon, but introducing us and making these things happen. So thank you. Tell Pat, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Take care, Justin.
Well, Justin, Kevin gave you quite a lead in there. And what I'd like to do is just let everybody else know a little bit about what we're doing here. But before we jump away, you really haven't had a chance to say a thing. So how are you?
I'm doing great. It's a little flippy-floppy as terms of the weather goes here. It was about 65 yesterday, and now it's like 38, so it's hence the jacket.
Well, great. We're going to cut away from you for a second, but just so everybody knows, that rig behind you, that's your small cold brew rig, right? Kind of a demo version?
Yep.
And we're going to be exploring that in just a minute, right?
Yeah, we will.
Awesome. Okay. Give me just a minute. I want to tell everybody a few quick things, and I'll get right back to you.
Awesome.
So, for those of you that are joining for the first time, Gourmet Brewing is all about monthly fee. Let me try that again. If you're a first-time viewer, Gourmet Brewing is about monthly free events with subject matter experts. And as you heard, Justin probably is one of the best there is on cold brew, which I'm learning is one of the very best ways to infuse in other beverages. And in particular, we're going to be talking about beer. This is our 63rd free event, and thanks to the supporters, this is totally crowdfunded via Patreon. So there's a green button there at the bottom of the screen. If you can be part of the solution to keep these going, I really would appreciate it. Our next part of this is there's a follow button in the upper right-hand corner. What that alerts you to is not only our major events, and you get a little notification that we've gone live, but I also do pop-up events 2 or 3 times every week. So if you click on that, you're not going to get spammed, but you will get a notification that I've gone live. So this week we've been talking to Gordon Shuck of Funkworks. We're going to continue to these are just pop-up events. So it's a great chance to jump in and see some wonderful, very brilliant subject matter experts. Refreshing your browser solves most technical issues, reducing the resolution by clicking on the gear in the lower right-hand corner. Please share in the chat where you're from. And I see a lot of friends there in the audience. Diana, Bill, Ran, Todd, Jeff. Gosh, I recognize a lot of those names there. So thank you all, and I appreciate you all showing a little love for these guys. You can submit your questions in the Ask a Question field. So this is a great chance to get your coffee questions answered. And I see somebody's already taken advantage of that. And thanks for those of you that have chosen the auto registration. Anytime you register for these events for the first time, there's an option there, checkbox, that says you have the option for auto registration. That really simplifies things, and it helps with just a host of issues. So when you choose that, it is optional. That way you don't have to click and register. It'll automatically be registered a day or two before the event whenever I pull the trigger. And lastly, please answer the poll, because I use that poll to help determine future programming. Our next event's coming up. I don't have dates yet, but probably the first week in May, we're going to be hearing from Deschutes Brewery, and we're going to be talking about biotransformation of hazies. We're going to be talking to Funkworks. I think it's going to be Gordon Shunk, one of the co-founders of Funkworks. And we're going to be talking about Saison's best practice. I'm also talking to Cabot Cheese, and we hadn't set a date yet. There's been a lot of interest in doing a tasting with cheese and learning more about beer pairings. So Cabot Cheese is going to do a program, most likely in May, but it could happen in April. And I'm most excited about Saison DuPont. End of May or in June, Saison DuPont, their leadership there, Olivier, is going to join us for a live stream event. So don't have a date yet. I will keep you informed as I know, and you'll get an email to that. So, Justin, I think everybody's ready to get started. I know I am. And what I would love to know, because I didn't know this before I met you and Kevin, the Kyoto style of coffee is just totally new to me. But as we've talked, you said you didn't invent it, that is actually quite old. Can you talk a little bit about the history of it?
Yeah, so basically what we call Kyoto style coffee here in America is actually something that's called Dutch coffee in Japan. And the reason it's called Dutch coffee is because in the 1600s, through the Dutch East India Company, there was trade between Japan and Holland. And one of the things that the Dutch people brought over to Japan was these coffee machines. And part of the reason why they like to use this particular coffee machine is because it could produce a very stable coffee that didn't require heat, which is, in the 1600s, you needed fuel. You needed to burn fuel in order to produce heat. On your ship, when they don't have, fossil fuel access. So that means burning wood or something like that, or maybe some simple coal. But long story short, it basically allowed them to brew coffee that was stable and also didn't require them to use a lot of their fuel. And it produces a very just wonderfully elegant cup of coffee. And I can see why Japanese people, because I actually speak Japanese. I went to school in Japan. So the Japanese ethos is very much about expressive flavors in food and beverage. They're a gourmand culture. So it seemed like a natural fit there. As far as the name Kyoto style, that actually came from a company called Blue Bottle, which discovered the style vis-a-vis Japan. And they decided that they wanted to kind of rebrand it in America. In about 2008, Japan was kind of at its pinnacle of coolness in America. I would say now it's probably leaning more towards Korea with the K-pop and everything. But Japan was kind of at its maximal cool factor, so they wanted to kind of get that cachet, and they started calling it Kyoto style coffee, and the name just kind of stuck. So, but if you go to Japan or Korea, it's called Dutch coffee.
So is the machine behind you? I mean, I thought it was interesting. You said the Japanese call it Dutch coffee.
Mhm.
Now, do, do the Dutch not have something to do with this?
Well, I mean, they originated it, so
Okay.
you can thank Holland for producing these machines originally several centuries ago. But I think now they're really more well known in Japan. You go to Japan and you will see these all over the place. In America, you typically only see the Kyoto style machine in kind of higher end places, whereas in Japan, you really can go anywhere. There even is a chain place called Hoshino, and they have it's basically like a Starbucks almost, and they have these in there. And even now, actually, Starbucks is starting to carry these too. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, you sent me some, right?
right.
And
You got my product.
yeah. So, are you ready to do a little bit of a tasting? I have been waiting for about almost a week to try this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing about it is it comes in this little pouch here. So you get 1.5 liters of concentrated coffee, and it's about a triple strength product. So that's part of the reason why I can mail it is because it is in this kind of compact. There's 2 wine bottles of coffee in here, but it doesn't seem like it. It's a very nice compact package. And then also the spout on there, it allows the coffee to come out, but it doesn't allow air to come in. So this simply flattens out as you dispense the coffee, which allows it an additional layer of freshness over time. So you can keep this in the refrigerator for a month. It probably won't last that long because you'll drink it all, but it will stay fresh while it's in the refrigerator.
All right. So, I'm going to switch over to the side camera, and I hope you're not hearing that roar in the background, but I'm heating up my water.
Yep. So you're just going to remove the seal on that.
Yeah. Okay. So that just kind of breaks off.
Yeah, break it off and just kind of take it off all the way around the back.
Oh, does it go all the way? Oh, okay.
Yep, all around. Yep,
There we
take that off.
go.
Yep.
Okay. Keep it on camera. It's a little bit
Then
awkward. Okay.
remove that seal on the bottom, that aluminum foil.
Oh, yes. You did tell me that. There we go.
All right, and now you're all set just to go ahead and dispense into your cup.
All right. So I'm going to pour just a little bit for starters. As you suggested, I taste it first just straight, right?
Yep. I mean, you can taste it hot first if you want to, and then taste it straight. The straight is very intense, so tasting it hot first, a little diluted, might actually be a little less powerful on your palate because it's a very strong product. So
Okay. So which do you think I should do first?
so go ahead and do your hot first.
Do the hot first.
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yep. Do your 50 grams.
So you had said 50 grams. So that's what we'll do here. Ooh, almost spot on. 47. So that works.
So that's good. Just go with that.
All right. And so I'm going to add 100 grams of water, hot water. All right.
So how much did you do?
Oh, another 100. Excuse me. I
Yeah,
bought
100.
it. Yeah. Should get 150.
There you go.
There we
Yeah.
go. I knew
Right.
something didn't look right. There we go.
Yep.
Okay. So let's
And
switch
you
over to the side
my
camera.
my dark roast. I got 2 different ones. I got a dark roast and a light roast.
So this is the black label.
That's correct.
And okay, it's got some flavors here on the back, it says.
Yep. So the tasting notes are cognac, stout beer, and shaved dark chocolate.
Ooh, that's nice. It is nothing like I expected. It's there's a Swedish flavor. I guess it's a tiny bit like a vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's very aromatic.
yeah, and there's not as much roast character as I
Right.
would have expected.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a little herbal, um, a little floral maybe.
It's a very expressive coffee.
It is great. It is so smooth.
Oh yeah,
Oh, there's not a lick of bitterness in it.
it's silky smooth. And actually, to address the question really briefly that was left by one of the audience members, um, when you get bitterness in coffee, that's because you basically had an uneven extraction. That water will basically pull too many tannins from one spot and kind of neglect another spot as far as the extraction. So typically bitterness is just caused by uneven brewing. There are so many specifics to go into with that, but part of the reason why my coffee tastes so smooth is because I know what I'm doing to such an extent that I can really avoid unevenness of brewing. So that clarity of flavor, that expressiveness, that volume that you get, it's almost like three-dimensional flavors. That comes from an evenness of extraction.
Oh, it's just perfectly clear.
Yep, no sediment, no haze, none of that stuff. So when you add that to the beer or to the cocktail, whatever product, it doesn't introduce any off colors or cloudiness or sediment.
Well, that is really nice. So it says tastes like cognac, stout beer, and shaved dark chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
I could see some of that, but it's all very, as you said, it's just nicely balanced, and there's no acidity, there's no tannins,
Yeah.
just so smooth.
Well, there are tannins, but the thing about it is they're in balance.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Balance. Yeah, the tannins are there. They're a crucial part of the flavor profile. There's
Yep.
acidity. There's all that stuff. But it's just in balance, so you don't notice it interfering. And what really comes through is the sweetness and then those flavors of roast and origin.
Okay. So what people may not fully appreciate is you mailed this to me
Yes.
probably a week ago.
Yes.
So it's been sitting. It went through the mail for 3 or 4 days, and it's sitting in my refrigerator for a couple of days.
Hmm.
And we just poured it, and we have instant coffee,
Right.
delicious coffee. And so how long will it keep in this pouch?
Well, like I said, it'll last in the refrigerator for about a month, and then if it's not in the refrigerator, you probably. I mean, I've sent it to like places like Switzerland and stuff like that. I get some international orders, and it's taken about a week to get there, and it tasted fine. But honestly, ideally, I just want it to be at room temperature just for a couple of days during transit, like 3 or 4 days. But I did an experiment where I left some out on the table for 10 days at just at room temperature, and it definitely tasted like it had fell off, but it wasn't spoiled.
So
You
it
know,
wasn't spoiled.
it accelerates over time. So day 10 spoilage and day 12 spoilage are just completely different. You know.
Wow. At a party, people will drink this up. Now, you suggested that I drink some straight, right?
Please.
Okay. So I'll switch over to the side camera, and I don't know if I can do this sideways. We'll get
And then also that
hit.
spout too is it's really good for the most part. It doesn't like drip so much, so it's nice and focused spout. Give yourself a little bit more, just a little bit more,
A little bit more. Okay.
just a little bit more. I want you to really be able to just kind of appreciate it like it's wine almost.
Gosh, it really doesn't drip. Okay. I just thought before I slurp it down.
There we go. Yeah.
And she's really dark,
Hmm.
but it's clear as a bell. I don't think you can see it on the camera.
It looks like
Um,
obsidian almost. It's like clear, but it's dark.
yeah. Wow. It is a whole different aromatic
Yeah.
cold. So do you drink it cold like this, or do you cut it?
Oh, I drink it straight, usually over ice.
Now, I get a little more acidity
Hmm.
in that. Maybe a tiny bit more tannins, but not much.
Hmm.
Mostly my biggest perception is a little more acidity,
Hmm.
and the flavors are just all amped up.
It's all
But
amped up. Yeah. It's like, and then now that you have some on your palate, take another sip because that first sip, it adjusts your palate, and then the second sip is really where you can taste it.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's where I'm getting more of the chocolate character. Some nice chocolate but it's not particularly roasty. It is just it's almost like a just gosh, I hate to call it a chocolate beverage because it's not that. But I mean, I'm drinking this with no cream, no sugar, and it is so pleasant.
Right. It's just like shaved dark chocolate, very nice because chocolate has an
Yeah.
acidity to it. And it just has that chocolate, like very sharp focused acidity that's not, gonna be off putting. It works well with milk. It tastes the way coffee smells, basically, is kind of how I describe it.
So we've got another one here to try right quick.
That's right. Yep.
What coffee was this, and what are we about to try?
Okay, so yeah, you tried my dark roast first, which is called Black Label, and that is a Brazilian Guatemalan blend. And that's really made as like the flagship coffee. The way I market that is I just tell people it tastes the way coffee smells, and they generally get it. As far as the next one, that's my light roast, which is called Purple Label, and that one is an Ethiopian blend, and it's got more kind of fruitier notes like citrus. It's floral, got some melon notes as well, and there's also a little bit of caramel going there as far as the sweetness goes.
Okay, so I've got that on the side camera. I went ahead and removed the seal so we wouldn't go through that whole ordeal again. So I'm going to put in 50 grams again. 47, 48, good. And I will add 100 more grams of water. There we go. And this color looks...
Note too.
It's a little lighter.
I'm sorry?
Looks a little lighter than the other.
Just a touch.
Ooh, look at those nice ruby highlights, though. Yeah. Okay, so this is Ethiopian. I love the Ethiopians. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That is so floral and fruity.
Yeah.
Like a bowl of fruit with some flowers nearby.
Yeah, it's very modern.
Wow. I can't believe that's coffee.
I know. I've given it to people, not told them what it was, and they couldn't guess that it was coffee.
No. Gosh, and it's an Ethiopian.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most striking Ethiopian I've ever had. Ever. I mean, most of them you have to kind of, well, sometimes the blueberry will hit you, but this is kind of like, wow. Okay, a little more acidity in this one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're going to get more acidity with the light roast. Also, just the bean itself, the inherent character of it is just much more acidic. It's much more fruit driven.
Definitely. Oh, it is so pleasant, though.
And then also, too, for the coffee that I use for that one is actually, it's from Counterculture, if you guys are familiar with Counterculture. And it's a certified organic bean. I can't call it certified organic because I'm not certified organic as a facility, but I do use a certified organic bean for that.
Wow. That is, now I'm not sure that would blend well in infusions because I think it is not as what the people think of coffee. It's not as
surprised. We were talking about in the lead up, the promo materials. The lighter coffees actually really work well with lagers and lighter coffees and IPAs and stuff like that. And even if you want to get into some sours and stuff like that, the lighter coffees generally do work better with that. Because one thing that is important to keep in mind is we're not just trying to give the beer a coffee flavor. We're trying to augment flavors in the beer too. So, and we'll get into that when you taste the Old Rasputin, because actually, believe it or not, with the Old Rasputin, we use the light roast coffee, not the dark roast coffee.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, this is phenomenal. And interesting enough, the blueberries, I didn't pick up at first, but now that I'm into drinking it, it just has a wonderful blueberry.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Anyway, it blows me away.
I know. That's why I went so crazy with this style.
So it's not that you have such special coffee, and I'm not dissing your coffee. I'm sure you have good coffee. But you're saying these unique ultra flavorful, ultra smooth come more from the process than necessarily just good beans. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's always going to be the way we look at it in the specialty coffee world is the bean is a kind of platonic ideal of perfection, and all you can do is just screw it up from there. So
And
whatever
so cold brew screws it up the least?
so whatever's inherent in that bean is what it is, and then you're going to bring that out, and either you do it in a great way or you do it in a bad way. So the combination of the Kyoto style, also with my particular expertise and my focus, because I brew all of this myself. I am everything as far as this company goes, including I'm the master brewer. So if something tastes bad, I actually just throw it away. So, which I haven't had to do for a long time, but in the beginning of the company, I was actually throwing away quite a few batches because I was just screwing them up.
Well, I want to try this now. So this is straight. There's no hot water in it.
Yeah.
Now the aroma changes quite a bit. A bit more roastiness in it. There's some caramel. Not as floral and fruity. Interestingly enough.
Tight nosed.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's the warm water that brings out all that. That's crazy.
And then also too, when you add the hot water to it, it does reach a nice temperature as well, a nice drinking temperature just right out the gate. It's not like scald your face hot, but it's also not tepid. It's just a nice sipping temperature.
Yeah, it is a whole different experience. Straight. Quite a lot more body, a bit more acidity, more of a roasty characteristics like you would expect from a coffee. Not as fruity, not as floral.
Yeah, you get the caramel kind of now.
Yeah, caramel.
Yeah. And then also take your second sip as well, because that first one is just to get your palate kind of calibrated. I learned that from a chef that I worked for. He told me always taste everything twice.
So if you had one of these, you could almost serve them as two different things. When you wanted to serve some hot coffee, you have the hot coffee, and when you want to serve something cold, and people would think it was two different things.
Yeah, and also too, when you're entertaining, you got the guests like, oh, I want this, I want that, and it's like, okay, you can make all of those drinks together. You don't have to split yourself up. You can even make iced lattes and all kinds of stuff.
So this bag will make how many servings of coffee, roughly?
You'll get 12-ounce cups of hot coffee. If you're drinking it just straight, a serving is 4 ounces.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of the caffeine content and just as a serving. So I basically took 12 ounces worth of coffee and just condensed it into a 4-ounce serving.
Well, before we move into the beers, and I'm anxious to do that, especially now, because I am blown away. And honestly, guys, I have not tried this coffee. I broke the seal because Justin said, I want to see your reaction when you try this. So I've never had it before, but I will have to say it is a striking coffee. So you're going to show us how to do this, right? Is that the demo at the back? Can you show us that before we move into the beers?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll give you a quick demo, and if you notice, actually, I'm going to step off frame for a second. There are two brewers in this shot. The first one is your one that you would get from the professionals, and this is made by a company called Yama. It's about $250, and the principal mechanism that Kyoto style works by is you have a reservoir at the top that holds your coffee, or your water, along with a nozzle that you can set to slowly drip that water one drop at a time onto the coffee grounds. Your coffee grounds just sit here in the chamber as the water flows through them. Now this part right here this is where really a lot of the magic happens. Because if you think about it, basically when you make coffee, you have kind of two ways of going about it. You have an immersion or you have a drip style. So the immersion style, to look at the hot coffee analogs of it, an immersion style would be like a French press, where the coffee basically sits free floating in the water, and then you would just extract it out, by straining it like tea almost. And then you also have a drip style, which is like your Fetco, your Mr. Coffee, anything that holds the water above and then slowly introduces that water to the coffee grounds. And those two different styles basically impart different qualities into the coffee. If you were to think about it, this way, that environment that the coffee is floating around in, you think of it as just water, but it's actually coffee, extracted coffee and water. So that water has coffee extraction in it floating around, right? In contact with the grounds. So when you remove those grounds, there's actually still some coffee that you extracted stuck to the grounds. You've basically removed that coffee from the ground and then reintroduced it to the ground by nature of it floating around. That's what happens when you do a French press or a conventional cold brew, where you basically just steep the grounds and you let it filter out. With the drip styles of coffee, if you look at this system here, you're adding fresh water to the top, and then brewed coffee is coming out of the bottom, right? So you're replacing the water that is saturated already with fresh water. Fresh water has a higher extraction potential. It's just more efficient at extracting those coffee solids. So you end up with just a more complete extraction. In addition to that, you don't have the coffee grounds floating in this environment that already has coffee into it. So that when the grounds are taken out of here, what's stuck to them is really pure water. It's not coffee water, it's pure water, because you're adding fresh water constantly. And if you've ever noticed, when you brew coffee, the first part of that stream, as it starts to drip into your carafe, the first part always looks a lot darker. And then towards the tail end of that brew, the water is much, much lighter. And that's just because as you get later in the brewing cycle, you have fewer dissolved solids per ounce of water that's coming out of there. Now in coffee, those towards the tail end, those are important actually, because that's where you do get a lot of the sugars and then the bitterness as well, which is important. It's important to have kind of all that in the right ratios with the coffee. But because you're not taking the concentrated coffee and leaving that stuck to the grounds, you end up tasting more of that in the actual cup. And also, you don't run into one of the paradoxes that no one ever talks about this in coffee, but it's something that I've kind of recognized, and I did a blog post about it, which was kind of a long spiel. But you get something that's it's a negative feedback loop when you make a coffee concentrate. So if you think about this for a second, I'm just going to come back in the shot for a second. So let's kind of use our mind here and see in our mind's eye, right? You see these coffee grounds floating around in a French press type environment, right? You're making a traditional style cold brew just with free floating coffee grounds in water, right? And you know that that water already has coffee extract in it, right? So whatever's in that water, when you strain those grounds out, that's going to be stuck to the grounds too, to some extent, right? The paradox is, the stronger you make your concentrate, the stronger the coffee is that's stuck to the grounds. So you actually run into a problem where the stronger you try to make your coffee concentrate, the more coffee you actually throw away, the less development and flavor that you end up in the cup, and the more of that is actually just thrown in the trash with the grounds. And that is just a problem that you run into inherently in trying to make strong concentrates using the conventional method of steeping the cold brew. Using the drip style, you no longer run into that issue because you benefit from something that I call drip efficiency. Drip, using those qualities that I just outlined, allows you to make as strong a concentrate as you want, and you won't run into that adhering to the grounds, leaving you with lost flavors and lost development.
You know, that's one of the reasons we like subject matter experts. The passion when you were describing that, you could just really see in your eyes, Justin. I mean, you really, this is heartfelt and a lot of expertise there. Well, before we move on to our Guinness Nitro, you were going to show us, I think, a do-it-yourself version. Can you just quickly show us that this doesn't have to be quite the Breaking Bad lab-looking device as it has to be?
Yeah, so basically this is an example of the kind of analogous setup that I created that allowed me to just do this at home. And it really started me just beginning my whole company. So before I started all of this stuff, I was just like much broker, and I didn't have $250 to swing to get this guy here. So I started to brainstorm and figured out a way to kind of build one at home, and I ended up doing so for about $80. And it was actually $50 because I already had the AeroPress, and that's $30 right there. So basically, all you need is just an AeroPress without the plunger part here, and you would put a filter in there, but this is just for demo purposes. So you have your AeroPress, and you have your coffee carafe here. So that is basically the carafe is analogous, and then the AeroPress forms the same function as this chamber here. You put the coffee in there, and you actually put a filter on top, just because as that water kind of hits it, it may dig a channel, a tunnel, because that water has energy that it's imparting. So you put generally a paper filter on top, which the AeroPress has the same kind of round filters that this does, just to dissipate that force when it hits the coffee grounds. And then the most important part of this is a separatory funnel, which you can get from any laboratory supply store. The separatory funnel with the stand itself will run you about $40 or so, $40-50 at the most. And basically what this is a glass borosilicate funnel with a stopcock on it that allows you to regulate the drip rate on that coffee so that you can achieve the same result. Because essentially, when you are cold brewing, you're replacing the heat with time. So because cold water still has energy that it can use to extract the grounds, and also there's chemical things that happen as far as the mineral content in the water, extracting certain flavor compounds from the coffee as well. But you don't actually need the heat because over long enough periods of time, the water can impart the same amount of energy into the ground. So that's why you just need this setup like this, because if you were to try to just simply pour it, you would end up with under extracted coffee, because you need a few hours at least to achieve that extraction using the
Justin,
cold.
before we move on, it doesn't look like brewing equipment on the far right and the far left. What are those two things?
Oh, this is just a trophy from America's Best Cold Brew competition in Chicago. We can talk about why I got second place if you want.
Well, it's not just a trophy.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the rest of us have one of those, so that's really cool. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. And then also, I got another trophy here, which is best coffee from the Coffee and Donut Festival that we have here in Chicago. So I like this one a lot because it looks like a cup of coffee.
Oh, I love that. Well, I want to move into our beer next, but just quickly going back to that. So potentially, for those that want to try some things at home before they order some of yours, you're saying that potentially that setup for about $80 could, with good quality coffee, could potentially yield the same kind of results that you've got here in the bag.
Yeah, and you would just dial in your recipe, and you can look at my blog on KyotoStyleCoffee.com, go to my blog, and I have a whole video outlining the process for doing that. So,
okay,
using
now,
specifically that DIY machine.
So, but it's not instantaneous. So if I brewed this much, which is what probably a quart or approaching it, how long would it take with that machine to brew a quart?
Oh, so I mean, to do the same volume, you'd probably have to do like maybe 3 cycles with that machine. And I don't know, each cycle for this one would be like 3.5, 4 hours.
Okay.
So yeah.
So this represents a lot of work on that small machine.
It does, yeah, for that. Yeah. But also at the same time too, it's one of those things where it's like you probably wouldn't need the whole pouch unless you were trying to do, a pretty big infusion, because even when you're adding it to beer, we find that generally that sweet spot is between 5 and 13% of that beer volume or mass, because we were kind of weighing it out, would be coffee.
So beer brewers are real sensitive about water, and Lou asked a good question. We won't dive into all the questions, but I thought this was quick and easy. Is it okay to use tap water? Do you need to get out the chlorine? Do you need to add anything to balance it?
Yeah, so basically, tap water, it really depends on where you live. If you get well water, that's obviously not good. If your municipal water has a high kind of chlorine taste to it. That's also not good. Chicago, we're fortunate because we have water that has the right mineral balance. It's just the levels are too high. So we use very simple filtration here in Chicago to just bump the calcium and magnesium levels down, and the bicarbonate levels as well. It bumps all those down, but it keeps them in the same ratio, because the ratio here in Chicago is just fortunate enough to really work for coffee. But if you're somewhere where you don't have that luxury, you have a couple options. For one, distilled water is just not the way to go. You actually do need the certain minerals in the right ratio, and then the right minerals themselves as well. And they are just not present in distilled water. So the coffee will taste just awful. It'll be really flat and sharp and just hollow tasting. And it'll just ruin your day. Like, it's really
spring water if you've got to buy water.
Yeah, spring water if you got to buy water. I mean, you can try like maybe Fiji, natural spring waters that don't have a lot of salt flavor in the water itself is going to be generally the way to go if you want to use a just off-the-shelf solution. Otherwise, if you want to have a more kind of bespoke solution, there is a product that's called Third Wave Water, and it's designed so that if you add that to a gallon of distilled water, it's basically powdered minerals in a little sachet, and you just pour that into the bottle, and you just shake it, and add it to your gallon of pure distilled water, and it will mineralize that water to the exact specifications for the Specialty Coffee Association. So, when they do coffee competitions and stuff like that, your water will be at the same basically spec to that. Also, if you wanted to create your own mineralized water, there is a recipe on a site called Barista Hustle by a guy named Matt Perger, who's one of the guys that I look up to. And he basically has a recipe for how to use Epsom salt. Just make sure you don't get scented Epsom salt by mistake. But if you use Epsom salt and baking soda, you're going to ignore the calcium part because calcium salts are actually pretty difficult to dissolve. But you can use those, and he has a recipe for how to make essentially a strong mineralized water that you can then add to distilled water as well, and it will mineralize that water. Everything's done on a scale, but it will mineralize that water to the right specs as well. And that's just cheaper than buying the Third Wave Water product.
So, Justin, we're 10 minutes from the top of the hour. I think what I'd like to do is move into our porter rather than the Guinness Nitro, because this has been fascinating, but I'm ready to get a beer that we want to infuse a little bit. Okay. And we really didn't plan to infuse the Nitro, so we may just have to enjoy that one later. So I'm going to switch to the Yingling, which is one of my favorites. I don't know that it's available everywhere, but it is a wonderful porter. So what I'm going to do is pour that right quick, and I think, Justin, you've also got one, right?
Yeah, so I got Edmund Fitzgerald by Great Lakes.
I love that name.
Yeah, it's great. I would love to get some Yingling, but sadly I'm here in the Midwest. Used to drink a ton of it, though, when I was in college in Delaware, so.
Let's see if we can get that. There we go. Oh, that's nice. See if we can get a little more head on that guy. See if we can get a little bit of a mushroom out of it.
Well, leave yourself some room for coffee, too.
Oh, I'm going to drink it.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, love my Yingling. Those are good, and these porters are hard to get. It's seasonal, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So some nice raisin, some caramel, a little bit of roast, but not very much. Just a touch of roast. Beautiful head.
It's just so caramelly and really nice, rich color.
Yeah, it is. It is just a gorgeous beer. As you can tell, it's fairly opaque. It is actually clear, but it's pretty dark. Love that. Okay, so we're going to doctor this guy with a little bit of your delicious coffee. Now, which one would you add some coffee to? I mean, which coffee of your coffee?
So you were saying you were getting some raisin from that, and what else, what other kind of notes were you getting?
A little bit of raisin, a little bit of caramel, just a hint of roast, not much at all. Probably a little biscuit. It's not acidic at all. It's very smooth.
Okay. These descriptors sound very much like the light roast might taste great in there.
Okay.
Because you got that raisin, you got the acidity. I think that would play.
How much would we put in there?
You could even split it if you have some left over in your bottle and kind of play them side by side if you like to.
Well, we can do that. Got another glass here. So we'll split it. Okay. So I've got roughly 50-50. Best I could eyeball it right quick. All right. So what would you suggest? Just kind of a shot?
I would suggest, why don't you just kind of, you want to do it on the scale or you want to just kind of eyeball it?
Let's just eyeball it.
Okay, so basically this is what you're going to have to do. Just add a little bit, like maybe a quick hit, and if you need more, you'll know.
Okay, so which one, the light roast?
Go ahead, go with the light roast first, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to, okay.
Yep, hit it with that and see if you need just a little bit more coffee flavor in there.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Has it changed the aroma at all?
It has. There is much more roast in it than, but again, this is cold. Yeah, that adds some nice coffee. So let's see how I haven't tasted it. Yeah, just a hint of coffee adds some floral complexities to it.
So are you getting the coffee flavor, or is it just kind of augmenting the beer?
It's really just augmenting it. There's just a hint of coffee flavor in it. But if you hit it a little bit more, and we'll try that. I mean, my thought would be that's enough, but I'm going to hit it a little more.
A little bit more. Hit it a little bit more. Yep.
Okay.
See, that's not a lot of coffee either. It's a very small amount of coffee needed to kind of augment those beers.
Yeah, of course, there's not much in this glass. Yeah, that might have been too much.
A little bit too much?
Yeah. Now it's tasting a little diluted.
Okay. What is it? Is it losing its effervescence?
Yeah, losing its effervescence. It's, I don't know, kind of changed the characteristic considerably.
Okay.
It was much better with the...
So yeah, this really does work best when you kind of do everything on a scale.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I got carried away. So we
fine.
Should try the dark now?
Too. Add the coffee first when we do the next one.
Okay. Oh.
It'll just allow you to hit your target a little easier because that beer, valve, it's kind of all or nothing.
Okay. So I'm just going to give this a shot.
1 second. Is that the light or dark?
This is the dark.
All right. Perfect. Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Didn't realize it. Okay.
Yep. That should probably be enough right there.
All right. So... Oh, definitely got some coffee.
Yeah, that's more like coffee there.
But it's very smooth coffee flavor. That is phenomenal. Although I think it's got a tad too much.
A little tad too much, yeah.
I think it's a little too much, but that's what's so neat about this, Justin. Yeah. I mean, you could, if you were a home brewer and you were entering it in competition, you could line up 6 bottles and decide which one had the right characteristic.
Exactly, yeah. It allows you to test across several dimensions and iterate a coffee beer so quickly.
But it's not diluted at all, even though I think it's a little bit too much. That is really neat.
Yep.
So smooth. Now, a lot of a lot of us would worry that, okay, if we're doing a competition, we're putting this in there. Do we have any idea of how long, how it's going to impact the beer's quality? Is it going to oxidize any sooner? Do you have any sense for that?
I don't really. That's not something that I have direct experience with in terms of measuring that myself. But the brewery that I work with, they don't order from me in a frequent enough manner that leads me to believe that that's a problem, because it means they're cellaring their beers.
And they're putting theirs in German beers, right? Didn't you say there was a Helles?
German lagers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're making Helles lagers that have coffee in them.
Okay.
Yeah, so and they're
try
those beers.
Let's try the old Rasputin, and then we've got some questions
that's
to jump
the
into.
shot right there.
All right. So I'm going to pour the old Rasputin. Do you have one of those?
I sure do. I always keep it in the fridge.
So we'll switch that guy right here.
Oh, you got the can.
I do. That's the only choice. I'd rather get the bottle, but this is all I could find. Great big can.
It's a beautiful can.
Oh, wow, that's dark.
And then for David, who's saying, hi, can you recommend a good water profile? I would say just visit the SCA and look at their recommendations for water profiles.
I'll look at the head on that guy.
That's, mesmerizing.
That is a serious head. We may have to give that one a second, let it settle down. So, which of the coffees should we try in this first?
I'm absolutely a fan of doing the purple label in that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Golly, that's a beautiful head.
Yeah.
I love that. And that is a cool can.
It is.
All right.
I'm actually jealous.
Let me try this guy. And, oh, that's interesting. I have not had one of these in a long time. Not nearly as much raisin. A lot more floral characteristics than I would have expected.
You get like some, almost like cherry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cherry, bright fruit.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really anticipating prunes and raisins and caramel, and I guess I'll get that in the flavor. Okay, so a bit roasty, not nearly as much raisin as there was in the porter, the Yingling porter. Dark chocolate. Most of the floral characteristics were in the aroma, not really so much in the flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So you think adding the purple label, which is the Ethiopian, to it is the way to go?
Yep.
Okay.
Same kind of hit that you did with the first pour, just one of those.
Okay. So I'm just going to give it a shot.
There we go.
Okay. So with those floral aromatics, it doesn't change the aroma much at all. It's just maybe a hint of coffee, not much.
Go ahead and actually taste it. So one thing I can tell you with the old Rasputin is it changes the flavor.
Mm-hmm. It does. It totally changes the flavor.
Because there is like when I have it, I'm actually going to add some coffee to mine.
It is super complex now.
Yeah.
I mean, I get like caramels and light caramels, light toast.
I think this is really beautiful with the old Rasputin, quite frankly.
It really is, because it's a bit, I guess what I had before was aged, because this must be fresher. This is a bit one-dimensional, but when you add this coffee to it, it adds a tremendous amount of complexity to it.
It really does, yeah. And it takes that cherry note, and that cherry note just becomes very cordial. It has a cherry cordial kind of note to it.
Yeah. This is this is fascinating.
It's
I
yeah,
am just blown away with how this can really change a beer to make it into something really wonderful. So should we try something with the dark?
yeah. I mean, try that with the old Rasputin if you still have some left.
I do. I
Yeah,
do.
please. I actually never even tried it with the dark, so I'm really curious to see how that comes out.
All right. So there's the dark. Excuse me. That's the old Rasputin. And I did do this in the wrong order. You had
It's
suggested,
fine.
so we're gonna try a hit just same way I did before.
And you
I
actually,
would guess
if you
that's
if you squeeze it a little more gently, you can get that product to come out a little more in a lighter stream, in a thinner stream as well.
it's a little hard to hold it up and
I understand.
and not spill it on all the equipment.
You're doing triple duty there, so.
I am. Oh, now this has quite a bit more coffee now,
Hmm.
but it's a real light coffee and caramel and toffee, probably a lot of toffee. Wow, that really changes it. Much more of a coffee stout
Hmm.
at this point.
It makes it much more traditional kind of coffee stout. Like it tastes like you added coffee to it, basically, instead of
Exactly.
augmenting the
But I
flavor.
think I like the Ethiopian in it better.
Yeah, we did a coffee beer cocktail revolving that. So it's 3.5 ounces of Old Rasputin, 1.5 ounces of my Purple Label coffee, 1 ounce of cherry hearing, which is a really nice cherry liqueur, and then also I think it was 2.5 ounces of Punta Mes vermouth. And
Well, what I like about it is you don't get a lot of floral characteristics in stouts.
mhm,
And the Ethiopian enhanced that.
mhm.
The the dark roast made it more like a traditional stout with coffee. I mean, it it's probably spot on to the style.
Right, yeah, it's true to kind of the thing people expect.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
honestly, you could serve that old Rasputin and call it a coffee imperial stout, and people will be like, "Where's the coffee?"
Right. Mm. All right. Well, I am so impressed. This is cool. I can't wait to try setting up one of those at home. Justin, it's a little past the top of the hour. I always like to try and get to questions at that point. But not everybody makes it in at the very beginning of the program. So they might be watching this and wondering what in the heck we are doing. Could you just kind of summarize what your experience has been with your Kyoto style of coffee brewing and the advantages of it? Just kind of summarize what you can do with this.
Yeah, so basically, we've been going over Kyoto style coffee, which is what I built my entire brand around. Um, and I offer this product here that we're testing in various stouts, but it's not just applicable to stout beers. You can also use it for different styles, including lagers, even very bright lagers like Hellas lagers. And basically, the reason why this coffee works so well is because you can create a super concentrated coffee that is perfectly profiled. So all those flavors that are inherent in the bean are articulated. It's sediment and haze free, so it will not interfere with the appearance of whatever you add it to. And it also makes just a great coffee on its own. So it's great for entertaining. If you have a bunch of different guests who all want to have coffee their own way, you can make bespoke drinks for them and make everybody happy with minimal effort. And this is a product that I'm able to ship to all 50 states from my website, kyotostylecoffee.com. It's $40, but the shipping's included. And when it arrives to you, you just put it in the fridge. And anytime you want perfect coffee, you just hit that button, follow the instructions. And it's also great for making just coffee beers, cocktails. It allows you to iterate your recipes because you can just pull a bottle off the shelf and put it on the scale, add coffee to it, and you're just ready to go. And you can test various different beer styles, various different concentrations across so many different dimensions. You can iterate a recipe just like that. So that's why I'm just super passionate about this style of brewing. So
Justin, it's going to be hard to go back to anything else.
That, and that's, I get that a lot. I've literally ruined coffee for people.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm able to do what I do. So
All right. Well, for those that have to run, I do understand a lot of people can only commit an hour. We've gone over that a little bit, so my apologies. I do thank the Patreon supporters who keep us going and doing this. Justin, I do appreciate you taking this time. Kevin, if you're still watching, thank you. I hope you and Pat are having a nice dinner. And Justin, do you have some time to answer the questions? We've got 4 right now, and we've got a bunch of people in the audience that I bet will pop in their questions. So, do you have time?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right. So I'll read them out to you. And Jesus asks, what could I be doing wrong if my cold brew is still dragging tannins?
So yeah, basically, if you're still tasting a lot of tannins, you're essentially brewing unevenly. So you're over agitating one area potentially. It depends on the style that you're doing, but you're over agitating one area of that coffee bed if it's a drip style, and if it's an immersion style, you're probably just like over stirring it. You're probably just agitating it far, far, far too much. Another potential is your grinder. So you want to use a burr grinder that makes an even particle distribution as much as possible. Because if your particle size of your grounds are too variant, then you effectively end up with the same effect on a particle level where some particles are over extracting, where some are not really getting properly extracted. So the quality of the grinder is also important too. So that's likely it. And then the last thing, actually there are 2 things when I think about it. The last 2 things is you might be using coffee that's just is inherently bitter itself. So if you're using something that's more kind of a commodity type coffee, a commodity coffee when you see it because basically you didn't get it from a specialty coffee roaster. Those coffees just tend to have higher tannin levels as a character. So you want to transition to a local roaster that actually has a barista who can sit down and have a real in-depth conversation with you. So my kind of criteria for a good coffee roaster is if you can walk in the shop and the person seems very passionate about talking to you about coffee, you should buy your coffee there. And then the last thing is your water quality is probably not exactly calibrated for coffee. So it might be negatively just extracting the tannins because those can be attracted to certain minerals within the water as well. So I would just kind of address those issues.
Wow, that's a thorough answer. But I know that was a tough question because I imagine tannins is a big part of what you're trying to avoid in these coffees.
Yeah.
Nate has the next question. So larger grounds or finer grounds for the best extraction and minimizing tannins?
So basically, finer grounds will actually get you a better extraction, but they're also kind of easier to screw up. So I would say finer grounds in less time. If you can make the grind finer, less time, less agitation, use Kyoto style. So this is with Kyoto style. If you're doing the immersion, everything goes out the window because quite frankly, immersion brewing is not good. So, and that's just my opinion, but I would put my coffee up against any immersion coffee any day of the week. So I would say, first of all, use a drip style and then try to find a kind of finer grind. So basically the way you calibrate is you look at your ratios. So in cold brew, you can operate in a window of, like 10 to 1. So for every 1 gram of coffee, you use 10 grams of water, all the way down to 6 to 1. So you would basically find your kind of spot for your concentration, and that's going to be based on using a refractometer. So if you want to get a certain TDS so that you have the added liquid is a certain strength, you would find your TDS and then basically make your grind as fine as you can. Don't go as fine as espresso, but look at like the pour over range. So basically the kind of range of a Mr. Coffee dripper, do the fine side of that range. And then the instant you start to taste bitterness, because you're iterating with your brews, get to the point where it tastes bitter and then start to back off of that bitterness. Basically make it coarse again. And then when the bitterness is gone, that you're finding your sweet spot. So basically, the way you calibrate yourself with coffee is you actually make it finer and finer and finer until it's kind of too bitter, and then you know that you've reached your limit, and then you start to back off that and start going coarse again until you find that sweet spot.
So do you have to vary that depending on the coffee, or once you've worked out your system, do for the most part all coffees brew the same way?
For the most part, you'll be in the same range within like within half a setting. So if you have a grinder that says less, on a 1 to 10 scale, you might find yourself at like a 4 to a 4.5, and you're just kind of fluctuating in that range depending on the coffee.
So is that the main thing that you vary depending on when you get in a batch of coffee, and your setup is you run a short batch and you say, oh, well, I need to grind it coarser or I need to grind it finer, but you don't adjust much else?
Yeah, that's the only thing I actually vary.
Okay.
Because everything else is tuned in, because I got my strength tuned in my yield, the final product result that I want. So the amount of water I'm using, that's all like dialed in. So at that point, it's just a matter of the profile, and just every coffee for the most part is going to be similar enough to each other that you find the variation between the grind size is just kind of a tight, narrow range of really half a step.
So I imagine several of us are going to try that setup that you've got behind you, the DIY version. Mm-hmm. How much water? You said you put a filter on the top of the coffee so you don't drive a channel through the center. But when you adjust the dripping, are you adjusting it so that it just stays full of water, to the top of the filter, or is there some balance there?
So yeah, basically, if you watch the video that I put on my blog, I gives the most detailed answer. It's like an hour-long video, so It's the most detailed answer. But long story short is, you do have to introduce some water to get it. Except because basically, dry coffee is kind of hydrophobic. So if you just start adding it too quickly, the coffee actually runs away from it. Okay. So you have to add that kind of gradually in steps, and just start to get a saturation throughout the entire coffee going over a period of time, which takes, maybe 20 minutes or so to really get it going. And then once you have that going, then you can finally start running the machine at, like maybe 4 drips every 6 seconds.
That helps. Okay, perfect. Good question, Nate. Let's move to Rand next. Rand asks, Justin, will you advise as to the best way to add it to homebrew? Mm-hmm. Would you add it during the mash, the boil, fermentation, post-fermentation, or at packaging?
So I would add it while it's in the bright. However, if you're iterating, let's say you have some homebrew that's in bottles already, you can just add it to the bottle. Just make sure you know what the mass of the coffee is, the mass of the beer in the bottle is already, or you just pour it into a cup or whatever. But you can iterate on a bottle level to find the right recipe, and then once you have your finished beer in your bright, that's when you would add the coffee.
And I love this. The recommendation I had always heard was take whole bean coffee, and fresh whole bean coffee, and just let it sit for a few days or maybe even a week in its final iteration, and this is so much more manageable.
Yeah, I think they call that dry beaning.
Yeah. Oh, they do? Okay, yeah. Dry beaning.
Oh, yeah. I don't like it.
Now tell me how you really feel. Dry beaning, and you don't like it. Okay.
Nah, I don't think it's great. I don't think it's great. You just get a superficial extraction of the coffee, and it's very just wasteful.
All right, so we're down to the last question, unless somebody pops one in right quick, and we'll let you get to your dinner. Todd asks, I have found when adding coffee grounds to beer, after a day or so in the secondary fermenter or the bright, you develop green pepper flavors. What causes this, and how do I avoid this? And I have experienced this in beer judgings.
Okay, so if you're getting green pepper, you might be getting actual fault in your beer. You may be introducing some sort of bacteria that's actually causing a fermentation process that produces a green pepper flavor. That's one potential. Also, you might be potentially under extracting the coffee itself, and under extracted coffee can give you vegetal notes. and one of those vegetal notes is tomato. Another one is green pepper. Another thing is if you're using a coffee from, let's say, Sumatra, Java, Indonesia, Sulawesi, those kinds of places, the actual profile of that coffee is a green pepper note. So if you're adding those particular coffees to the beer, you may be getting a green pepper from that too. So the best way to avoid that is to not add grounds to the beer. Coffee extracts in a water environment that has to have the right amount of minerals. When you are introducing a nutritious mash to that coffee, you're hitting with all kinds of minerals because, whether you're using, wheat or oats or whatever you're using to brew your beer with, it has minerals in it. So you're adding too many minerals to the coffee and you're going to over extract it. You're going to extract weird things from it. You have to just use pure water to extract coffee. So the best way to do that is to just make the coffee separately in a concentrated form, and then titrate that into the beer. Just because any other way, and you're just putting that coffee into a water environment that's not ideal for coffee extraction. So,
well, that was phenomenal. Justin, I want to switch gears a little bit. At CoffeeCon, you went through a whole host of recipes that you and a mixologist were working on. So is there, I think we're out of time at this moment, and you're probably not prepared to give any of those, but is there anywhere you share those recipes besides the presentation on CoffeeCon?
absolutely, yeah. So the name of the guy is David Moore, and he's chronicling. So basically, I was helping him with his book on coffee cocktails, and you can follow him on Instagram. He's chronicling his process of that book called Breaking Black, which using Kyoto Black to create all these cool coffee inspired recipes. And you can follow him at David M. Moore on Instagram and check out what he's doing in his progress with the book. And then also you can follow me on Instagram at Kyoto Black Coffee. And that's where we really talk about the kind of cocktail side of things. So yeah, that's pretty much what we do. Actually, I do a podcast as well called The Sultan of Slow Drip. And we talk about those recipes as well. And that's on YouTube.
And well, we got 2 more questions. Do you have time for 2 more?
Yeah, I do. I can stick around for like another maybe 20 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well,
you have
Todd has a question and Chuck has one. So, and by the way, Justin, this is phenomenal. This is the best dissertation on coffee I think I've ever heard, especially as it relates to infusions. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So let's see. Todd's. I just messed up, Todd. My apologies. Let me reopen that topic. Come back to you. Okay. I found when adding coffee ground. Oops, that's the same one. We've done that one. All right. Chuck has the next one. Did I understand that once you find your grind, that it holds true over different variety of coffee beans?
Yes, it holds true. Within a very narrow range. So within about half of a step, let's say, so we have a grinder that's on a scale of like 1 to 10, you will find that your adjustment between coffees is going to be within half a step. So if you generally are doing it on a 4, your range is going to be like, between a half a step or a quarter of a step under the 4 and a quarter of a step over the 4. So you have like kind of a half a step range around that 4.
All right, and I think that gets our last question. And Justin, again, do you mind putting in there in the chat a link to your website if anybody wants to, rather than build the contraption behind you, if they decide they just want to get a quart of this, which will make what, 3/4 of a gallon of?
Quart is 1.5 liters.
It's 1.5 liters. Okay, so it's more than a quart. So that'll make darn near a gallon of coffee, right?
So if you do it hot, you'll get 4.5 liters.
4.5 liters. That's pretty close to a gallon, I think. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I really hate for my wife to try this because she's never going to like anything else.
And then the great thing about it too is I do a subscription model, and you get a very good discount starting at 25% off if you subscribe to monthly subscriptions of the coffee. So.
I might be subscribing to that. We have another question if you're willing to answer it.
Hmm.
Very good question from Jeff. I may have missed it, but does the pH make a difference in the final product? And I assume he's talking about the pH of water that he's using, but maybe he'll pop it into the
Yeah, I
chat
might
there.
have to re-ask that question because it's too vague.
Ah, too broad.
Oh, it's too vague.
Can
I don't know the pH of what.
well, maybe he'll pop it into the chat. Can you do that for us, Jeff? Can you
Jeff,
explain your question a little better
yeah, I want to make
or
sure I answer it
a
good.
little more broadly? I imagine he's typing right now.
Yeah, we'll give him some time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, starting pH of the water. Yeah, yeah, you don't want to play with pH too much. It doesn't help. Just kind of neutral water pH is the way to go. I play with pHs. You don't get good results.
Really?
Yeah, you get really bad results. So
Don't mess with that.
don't mess with it.
Well, in brewing beer, that's a very common thing to do,
Right.
but you don't recommend it for coffee.
Absolutely not. And that's another reason why you don't want to dry bean or add grounds or anything like that. Because if you tinker with your pH of the water, your coffee is going to ruin your beer. And then now that beer that you've spent all that time working on has been completely just botched because the coffee didn't really behave in a way that was acceptable. So
Okay.
yeah, it's that beer. When you think about it, because I look at beer brewers and I marvel at you guys because what you do is so hard. Like I'm literally just working with two inputs, water and coffee. You guys are working with so many different inputs and making it all happen. You have to worry about, the beer getting infected and all that stuff. That's stuff that I don't have to worry about. Like I can ship my product and I know that it's stable and all that stuff. So don't put yourself in a position where you could potentially ruin your beer that you worked so hard for by adding beans to it.
That makes a lot of sense. And if you want to do it really easy, just order some of your coffee.
Yeah, I mean that's always good. That's always good, especially if you're in a
Yes,
situation
Jeff.
because likely you won't need more than a pouch to kind of doctor up your home brew to make it a coffee beer.
All right. Well, I think that's our last question. And I like what Doug says. Great talk, Justin. Can't wait to order some of your product. Appreciate the dissertation. Uh, Listen, this was really great. Nate says, can't wait to try these things. I can't wait to set up one of these brewers. I want to see kind of what results I get. I may have to, but I think your subscription model. Can you explain what the subscription model is?
Yeah, so basically you get 1, 2, or 3 pouches a month, depending on the level that you choose. The higher the level, the better the discount. And I'm actually going to be increasing my prices soon, so you want to get in on that because some people have told me that my coffee is a steal. So, but basically, I ship it to you from Chicago. Shipping's included in all pricing, and I ship to all 50 states just for the same rate. So everything's all the pricing is up front, no additional charges, and then you can pause or cancel or whatever whenever you would like to.
All right. Well, Jeff has added a thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
listen, Justin, thank you so much for your time. We'll let you get to your dinner. This was great. I've had a wonderful time enjoying your delicious coffee. And
For asking me to do this, I really appreciate it. Yeah.
well, it was a lot of fun, and we appreciate it. And I hope we can do something in the future.
Awesome. Me too.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for taking the time. Bill says, thank you for the information. Justin, Greg says, amazing presentation. Kevin says, nice job, Justin.
Thanks.
And it really is phenomenal. And I think it's so funny. I had always heard the absolute best way to get coffee flavors in your beer was what you're calling the dry bean method. And you're saying absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, dry beaning is better than adding grounds for sure, but
Okay.
it's not ideal though.
But a cold brew Kyoto style you think is best practice.
That is optimal, I think.
All right. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap this up. Is there any last word that you've got?
Thank you guys. Keep brewing, keep tinkering, and somebody please make me a coffee sour that is like a traditional like barrel aged sour, and I will come check that out. So
All right. Well, again, Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun. Some of the best coffee beer I've ever had. And, I think, Justin, maybe some of the best coffee I've ever had. This is phenomenal. So thank you so much. Bye-bye,
Absolutely.
everybody. Have a great weekend. It's almost upon us, and we'll look forward to seeing you coming up. We're going to have Deschutes Brewery on biotransformations, Funkworks on saisons, an event with Cabot cheese, and then we're going to have Saison DuPont joining us. So a lot of fun coming up. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Kevin, if you're still watching. Bye-bye.